Is it about to pop? It feels like we are watching everyone and their mom take massive amounts of money and throw it at artificial intelligence right now.
You want more money, don't you?
But with each passing day, as we see the valuations of these companies continue to get bigger and bigger, we're also seeing a growing group of leaders raising their hand and saying, guys, I think that this might be a bubble and it might be about to burst.
You heard it here first.
So, today I want to dive into both sides of this conversation and get your thoughts in the comments on whether you think we're in an AI bubble, if it's about to burst, and what you think might happen if it does. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Leading Change. My name is Emma Roloff, and in these discussions, we take a look at current events and how they relate back to the world of digital transformation, change management, leadership, and emerging technologies. And today, we're talking all things AI bubble. If you're enjoying our content, consider subscribing to our channel, giving this video a like, and dropping a comment. We personally respond to every comment that we get because we enjoy having a conversation with you. So, October 29th, Nvidia announced that they were the first company ever to reach a $5 trillion valuation. And that is trillion with a T.
Why make trillions when we could make billions?
And while there was so much excitement surrounding the growth of Nvidia and what they've been able to accomplish, their stock rose over 4% today. There are understandably some people who are uncomfortable with the hype surrounding AI and specifically the transformational technology that Nvidia is powering with their chips. And there's this underlying unease with these record-breaking valuations. But their CEO was quoted saying, I don't believe that we're in an AI bubble. All of these different AI models that we're using plenty of services and paying happily to do it. And I don't think that would surprise anybody that the CEO of the largest company in the world, who is benefiting off of all of the hype that might be powering a bubble, would say, don't worry, guys. It's not a bubble. This is the real deal. Don't be concerned.
Trust me, I'm an expert.
But there are growing numbers of leaders and folks that are in the AI game, like Sam Altman or other technology leaders like Bill Gates, that have started to come out and say that there is probably some reason for the concerns surrounding overhype and a potential bubble. So Bill Gates was on Squawk Box earlier this week, and he was quoted saying, absolutely, there are a ton of these investments that will be dead ends. But he kind of agreed with the CEO of Nvidia and said that AI is a transformational technology, very similar to what we saw with the internet, and that we will see the same type of disruption over time from the technology. But just like what we saw with the dot-com bubble, we're likely living in a bubble where maybe the biggest players are going to succeed, or there will be outliers where the investments made sense, but there will be plenty of other places where the investments or the risks that people have taken tied to AI don't pay off. And depending on how big that wave of other companies not being able to make the most of their investments is, we may see cascading effects. And there's this other really interesting component that's very similar to what we saw back in the day in the dot-com era of circular investments coming into the picture, specifically when it comes to Nvidia and OpenAI. The CEO of Tuttle Capital Management was quoted saying, AI's current expansion relies on a few dominant players financing each other's capacity. The moment investors start to demand cash flow returns instead of capacity announcement, some of these flywheels could seize. And I think that's where most people are feeling uncomfortable and where most people are seeing the parallels between what happened in the dot-com era to what is happening today. I think that there is no question in my mind that artificial intelligence is truly a transformational technology, similar to what we saw with the internet or when the computer first hit the scene. And what we're seeing in terms of adoption and current disruption, it is following the same trajectory that those two other technology advancements did in terms of how they're disrupting our work and changing our day-to-day lives. So it's not a question of whether AI is here to stay. I don't think that we can put the genie back in the bottle. And if the bubble magnificently pops, all of a sudden the technology is going to go away. It's just a question of what is going to happen to all of us when we start to look at the biggest component of the US economy going pop. And it's being predicted right now that almost 92% of the growth of the US GDP in first half of 2025 was all tied to artificial intelligence. And when you take that away, we stayed pretty much stagnant from an economic standpoint.
That's unbelievable.
And so there is a lot riding on the hype and the hope surrounding artificial intelligence. But coming back to the idea of these circular deals, there is a lot of concern about how money is being moved around in these different companies to do just what that last quote said of increased capacity. So, looking at OpenAI alone, and also Sam Altman has come out and said that, yeah, I think we might be a little overhyped, which is rich coming from him, given what I'm going to share with you here. But we look at OpenAI alone. They have $300 billion in a deal with Oracle so that they can buy billions in computing power. Then they have a $22.4 billion deal with CoreWeave to be able to provide AI infrastructure. Then they have up to $100 billion from Nvidia to finance data center buildouts for OpenAI. $11 billion total from Microsoft for the evolving relationship between the two companies. And then most recently, they also announced a deal with AMD to purchase AMD chips in addition to what they already have the relationship standing in place with NVIDIA. And so when we start to look at all of these components and the money transfer, then you look at something like NVIDIA, they also have relationships with Oracle and CoreWeave and OpenAI and SoftBank Group and all of these different areas where we start to see this web of money and capacity being traded between these companies where if something falls out, or somebody demands, like that quote from the investment banker was saying, somebody demands that there is real value that's created here, this flywheel and these different woven together investments start to unravel really quickly. And when we have this much of our economy riding on these circular deals, that becomes really uncomfortable for a lot of people.
Oh, this is uncomfortable.
So the question becomes, what do you do as a leader? And how do you make use of this transformational technology while there's also potentially economic trouble ahead or this bust that's going to make a lot of people question the value of the tool? And I come back to something that I talk about almost every single day, whether it's on TikTok, here on YouTube, over on LinkedIn, or on a stage when I'm giving a keynote. The best thing that you can do as a leader in the era of AI and really truthfully any technology is come back to the problems you have in your business. Focus on where there is a real opportunity to solve problems. Fall in love with that problem, fall in love with optimizing that process, and then go out and search for the technology that's going to enable it. Going out and spending massive amounts of money on pilots for generative AI without a why behind it is a very quick way to become one of the dollar signs that disappears into nowhere if this all falls apart. But if you've got solutions that are in your organization that are driving real value and solving problems that you haven't been able to solve in the past, that value doesn't disappear because there is an AI bubble burst. That value remains, and you are able to continue to build on your momentum of solving real problems. And when we look at what a lot of companies are doing right now, they have this AI first mentality, which I have talked a lot about on the YouTube channel. And that AI first mentality of searching for problems with your solution rather than searching for solutions to your problems is part of how we get this hype and this blow up of the bubble in the first place. So keep your head level, focus on real problems and practical implications of artificial intelligence with tested use cases. then you get to be on the side of this story that is capturing the value and gets to continue to build on that momentum over time as we see artificial intelligence really find its footing and figure out exactly where it offers value at a larger scale, like we now see play out with the internet. But like I said at the very beginning, I want to hear your thoughts. So drop a comment below and tell me whether you think that the bubble is about to burst and how you think it'll play out for all of us in the aftermath. I'd love to continue the conversation with everybody down below, so I'll see you in the comments. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Leading Change. If you like what you saw, be sure to come back on a weekly basis and subscribe for more expert interviews focused on digital transformation, change management, and emerging technologies.